Hello everyone. I hope you're ready for story time. Just kidding. It's not a story time video, it's a theme video. But I am going to tell you a story today, a story about ecosystems. That's what we're learning about this week, right? Ecosystems. Ecosystems means the plants and the animals that live in one area and how they interact with each other. Maybe some animals eat the plants, maybe some animals eat the other animals, but how all of those parts are important to that place, right? So there's many different types of ecosystems in the world. There are forests, the forest ecosystem, desert ecosystem, ocean ecosystems, the tundra. There's many different types of ecosystems in our world. And the story I'm going to tell you today is about the forest. Okay, so this is a forest in North America. I've got a picture here on the table that sort of shows you what this forest would look like. All right, now in this forest, it was a beautiful forest, lots of trees, lots of bushes and trees and plants, beautiful rivers. If we look inside the river here, we can peek inside and see that this river has fish inside, right? Fish that like to live inside this river. So lots of animals, Can you find any animals besides these fish? I showed you these fish. Can you see any other animals in this picture? What about this one over here? Do you know what this is? It's a deer. Good job. Right. And can you find another deer? Is there another deer in this picture? Over here. Yeah, there's another deer right over there. Now, what about these animals up here? There's two of these animals over here. Do you know what they're called? Big, scary, mean animals that like to sneak around the forest and like to hunt and catch these cute, nice, sweet deer. These are wolves. Now, wolves are animals that, they're hunters. They go around and they catch other animals to eat. All right, so this is our forest. Lots of animals, lots of plants. There's lots of other animals you won't be able to see here. There's birds. The birds come and they eat these fish. There's beavers. That cut down trees and build dams and eat fish also. There's bears that come and eat the fish. There's many different animals that live in this ecosystem together. Now, there's another animal that lives in this ecosystem, and that's a human. Now, they aren't in this picture, but nearby this forest in North America, there were farmers that lived. Many different farms. And the farmers were upset. The farmers were angry because the wolves weren't just hunting the deer. The wolves were also going to the farms and catching the farmers' animals, like the farmers' sheep and the farmers' chickens and the farmers' goats. So the humans, those farmers, were really upset with these wolves. And they wanted to do something about it. So the farmers got together and they thought, we've got a great idea. Why don't we hunt the wolves, catch the wolves, get rid of the wolves, and then everything will be great. Right? Our farms will be okay. The deer will be okay. Everything will be great when we get rid of the wolves. So that's exactly what they did. The farmers went, the humans went, and they hunted all of these wolves, and they caught every single wolf that was in this forest. There were no wolves left in this forest. Now that created some interesting problems. Now, usually, before, when there were lots of wolves, the deer would come to this river for just a short time. The deer need water to drink, to live. But they would come to this river, they would get a quick drink, and then they would run away as fast as they can. Because the wolves were smart. And the wolves knew that if they hide here by the river, as soon as the deer come to the river, the wolves can catch them. So the deer were very afraid of this area, but they had to come to get water. But now there weren't any wolves. So that means that the deer could come by this area and stay for as long as they want. And that's exactly what happened. Over time, more and more deer started to show up in this part of the forest. Because there weren't any scary wolves to eat them. Right? So, all right. Now, we might think, oh, great. A nice happy ending. Right? These cute, nice deer have a nice place to live. They don't have to worry about those scary wolves anymore. Everything's going to be great. But actually, no. That's not what happened. Now, the deer don't just drink water, right, to live. They also need to eat. And what do deer eat? they eat plants. So they eat these nice little baby plants, these soft plants. That's their favorite things to eat, like little saplings that are growing out of the ground. So they eat these little saplings that grow out of the ground. And eventually, because there were so many deer that came to this part of the forest, eventually there weren't really any saplings that were growing next to this river anymore, you know? And next, the deer would eat these sort of medium-sized trees, right? The leaves they could reach on these medium-sized trees. They would come by and eat these ones, right? Now, the big trees, the old, big, tall trees, most of them are too big and too tall for the deer to eat. But those trees are also old. And so some of them eventually would, fall over, or maybe people would come and chop them down, or, beavers might come and get them, or they might get struck by lightning. There's many different things that might happen. But eventually, because all the old trees were falling down and disappearing, and because all the saplings were gone, and all the smaller trees are gone, there weren't any new trees, right? Because if you want a big tree, you have to first start with a small sapling, and then that sapling will grow up into a big tree. But now there are no saplings, which means there aren't going to be any more big trees. Okay, well, we can see a lot of problems already. First of all, it's much less beautiful. But more importantly, what about the birds? Do the birds have a nice place to live? No, there's not very many trees for them to live in. What about squirrels? Yeah, the squirrels are missing their homes, right? It causes a lot of problems when you start taking out the plants. Now, one very surprising problem happened with the river. Now, in a river, water rushes down the river, and that water can wash away some of the dirt that this river is made out of. Some of the dirt that's, the bottom of the river and the sides of the river. The water will wash some of that dirt away. Now, usually the roots of plants that are growing next to this river help keep that dirt in place, right? Because these roots are looking for that water. The roots grow through the dirt, and then the water can't really wash away that dirt because the roots are holding that dirt in place. But now, if there aren't any plants, that means there aren't any roots either. So what happened next is that, every day the water rushes through this river and started to carry more and more dirt away. And eventually, the river became very, very wide, like this. Now you might think, oh, that's nice. That's a great place for fish to live, right? Now there's more space for fish. But actually, that's not what happened. When the river got wider, it also became much more shallow. So let's peek into the water here and see what that would look like. So remember before, the water was very deep and had lots of fish, but now the river is wide and shallow, so there's no more fish. All right, now that's a big problem, because what about the animals that eat the fish? Like the birds, like hawks and eagles. What about bears that might come and try to eat the fish? Right? That's a big problem for this ecosystem, because now all of the animals that needed the fish for food, they don't have any more food. So they may have to leave to go to another part of the forest, or they might die. So this is a very sad ending to this story, right? All because the deer started eating too many plants because the wolves weren't there to catch them. But luckily, that's actually not the ending of this story. What happened was, after about 10 or 15 years, when this ecosystem started to break, the humans that lived in this area, they were looking at, the scientists that were researching this forest, looked at this area and they said, oh my goodness, we've caused a big problem here. When we took away the wolves, we broke this ecosystem. It can't function with one piece missing, right? All of these things are equally important. The wolves are not scary and mean. They're just wolves. Yes, they are catching the deer, but it's not because they're mean. It's because they're hungry. And a wolf's job is to catch other animals to eat. And the deer aren't nice or sweet just because they eat plants, right? If there's too many deer, those deer can destroy the forest by eating too many plants. So it's not like one animal is nice and another animal is mean or something like that. And it's not like one animal is more important or another animal is less important. Those scientists realized that everything had to be balanced. Everything had to work together. Now, luckily, what the humans did was they decided to bring back the wolves. So they brought wolves from other forests, from other places, and they brought them back to this forest. Now, when they brought the wolves back, of course, some of the deer got eaten by the wolves. Some of the deer got eaten by the wolves. But more importantly, could the deer come and stay by the river all the time now? No, they would come to the water, they would get a drink, and they would run away as fast as they could to stay safe from the wolves. So now, once the wolves came back, and of course, the wolves aren't all going to stay here. Some of them are going to go off and chase the deer some other places. But once the wolves came back, now the number of deer started to disappear. Right? That started to get smaller, the number of deer. And that was good news because that meant that now all of a sudden, some plants could start growing again. Some baby sapling plants that before they would get eaten by the deer, but now the deer aren't here anymore. They're not here as often. And so some of those saplings could start to grow again. And eventually, what are those saplings going to become? Well, eventually they're going to get bigger, right? And bigger, like this one here. And maybe even bigger like this tree here, right? And eventually, after the humans brought the wolves back to this part of the forest, eventually trees started to grow all over. Right? All because now there were less deer. There were less deer to eat these baby plants. Right? Now, when that happened, after that happened, when there started to be more little baby plants, now there were more places for other animals like birds to come and live. So the birds came back, squirrels came back, and now that there started to be plants growing next to the river, well, the water still washes away dirt, but because of the roots that were growing next to this river, like this, with the roots going down into the dirt, because of that, the water couldn't wash away the dirt on the sides anymore, and it began to get deeper and deeper again. And so the fish could come back. And when the fish could come back, the birds that come and catch the fish can come back, and the bears can come back. And eventually, the forest went back to normal. So that actually is a very happy ending to this story. But it's a very good reminder that ecosystems have to be balanced. Right? Everything needs to be the right number. We can't have too many of one animal or too many of another animal. Everything has to be balanced together. All the different types of animals, all the different types of plants, all the different bugs, they all have to be balanced together. We can't get rid of anything. The other thing that's important for us to remember is that as humans, as people, we go all over the world and we make our houses anywhere we want. If we want to build a house in the forest, we build a house in the forest. If we want to build a house in the desert, we build a house in the desert. We could even build a house at the bottom of the ocean if we really wanted, right? But we have to be really careful because we're actually very powerful animals, right? We can go and we can cause a lot of problems because, we're so powerful. We can cause a lot of problems in an ecosystem. Wolves are tough animals and they're scary animals, but they weren't as scary as humans because the humans were able to get rid of all the wolves very quickly. Now, that means that we have to do our best to think about ecosystems, to think about what we are doing to the ecosystem, right? If you were going to build a house over here on this side of the river, and if that means, you're going to knock down some trees so that we have space to build our house, well, maybe we should plant some more trees on the other side of the river, right? That way, there's still places for birds and squirrels to live. Even though we've cleared out a little spot for ourselves, for the humans over here, we've created more space for other animals over here, right? We have to do our best to think about the animals, to think about the ecosystem, and to not do anything that would hurt the ecosystem too much. So I hope you enjoyed this story about this very special forest in North America. The good news is now at this point in time, this forest is back to normal. It's beautiful. There's flowers and birds and animals. It's all back to normal. But it was a close one, right? And it was a sort of a scary mistake by the humans to think that we could just get rid of one piece. So I hope you see that, an ecosystem has to be balanced, and if we get rid of one part, it's kind of like dominoes. If you stack up many different dominoes and then you hit the first domino, that domino hits the second domino, and that one hits the third, and then all the way down the line. So we have to do our best to take care of the earth, to take care of these ecosystems, all these different ecosystems. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you had a great time. See you next time. Bye-bye.